Now we turn it over to Kim Kenny, who's going to give us some information about the dropout rate and report in PUSD. So give her a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to give a brief update on the dropout and graduation situation in Pasadena Unified. And Carolyn wanted me to remind us that we've been looking at this for about 10 years. I'm currently a school board member in Pasadena Unified and have been for 3 years. But I really am speaking for myself today. This is not a district position, not a school board position. I'm speaking as an advocate for students, for parents, for the community. I've been a parent in this Pasadena Unified for 10 years, and then I was previously a data consultant for the district. So just some background, the League of the Pasadena Area League did a report for Pasadena Unified. The Education Advocacy Committee did a report, I think actually for a number of school districts, and presented it to the Pasadena Unified Board in 2007. And they did a lot of interviewing of stakeholders all around. And the recommendation to the board was to develop a comprehensive plan for dropout prevention with 4 key components. And they were a clear definition of a dropout, strategic planning to coordinate with community agencies and businesses, consistent funding, and continuous oversight. And I know that I wanted to kind of review that myself this morning when I was looking at it as I was thinking about where we are now. And so people may have seen recently in the paper that dropout and graduation rates were just released by the state, and this is for the 12-13 school year. So there's always a little bit of a delay in getting that data out. It's nice when it doesn't overlap with the following graduation year, I'll just say that. So our Pasadena Unified graduation rate is at 82.3%, which is slightly higher than both LA County and the state, and it's up 7.1 points in 3 years. And also, what was really pleasing for us to see is that our graduation rates for Latinos, African Americans, and low-income students are all over 80%. Another positive in our community is LearningWorks Charter School, which I think most of you are familiar with, a school that takes dropouts and students who are having difficulty in traditional schools. They've had over 100 graduates in each of the last 2 years, and I think are projecting over 100 again this year. And this really does have an impact on our Pasadena graduation and dropout rates because those students were formerly ours. And so those numbers might look different today without LearningWorks. One of the things that we've worked on in the district in this last year is contracting with an outside attendance program. And I think there's a lot of research that shows that attendance really is important, and even dropping off in attendance in elementary can then influence whether kids stay engaged in school and are ultimately drop out or graduate. And so we've already seen just in the first year of using this program an increase in attendance. I think we need to do a little bit more analysis and see if it's at the elementary rate, if we're also seeing it at secondary. And attendance is important for 2 reasons. One, children can't learn if they're not at school, and it also affects our funding as a school district, which then affects the programs, how much money we have to provide programs for kids. So attendance is terribly important to us. And then our district is continuing to build a career and college-ready program for our students, making sure that's the focus. We are looking at our graduation and diploma options again. We had a meeting earlier this year, presentation from staff to the board, and we're looking at that again to make sure that we are kind of offering enough options for all of our students, but also making sure that it's a rigorous program so that when kids graduate, they're both college and career. And I think this is something the state is also really grappling with, is what does that mean to be college and career ready? Because it's very easy for us to say, but we have to define what it means, and then we have to be able to show that we're meeting it. So I'm always a glass half empty kind of person, so I always see the work that's left to do. So I wanted to share some of my concerns, and one that I've mentioned before. We switched 4 years ago to a new way of calculating dropout rates and graduation rates, and The graduation rate is based on students who graduate within 4 years. And so that's actually a little more stringent than we had seen in the past, because we said, okay, let's look at everyone who graduated this year and count them all, even if they've been in high school 5 years, 6 years. So that's good, but in this new system, they left a bucket. There's a bucket for graduation, a bucket for dropouts, and then a bucket for still enrolled. And that, for Pasadena Unified, is about 8% of our kids, 108 students. And the problem with the new system, from my way of looking at it, is that we never really look back and see what happened to those students. They never are reflected in our dropout rate if they do indeed drop out. They're not reflected in our graduation rate either. So both the graduation rate and the dropout rate are slightly understated, and my concern is that with the dropout rate being understated, that we get lulled into kind of a false sense of complacency and say, wow, we've made such great strides in the last 10 years. I mean, and it's kind of, our graduation or our dropout rate has kind of gone like this, and here was where we were reporting on paper. It was a little bit free form. Then we went into CalPads and our state data system, and we got a lot more accurate. And then we changed the way we counted it. So you'll see a lot of variation, and sometimes it's kind of hard to know what those numbers mean. So that's something that I think I'd like to continue to talk to the state about, making sure they really get those numbers accurate for us. The other concern is we had a high school graduation grant from the federal government, and this was extremely positive for our district, but it's over. And so that means a loss of some of the extra staffing we've had at our school sites, who are working with students on attendance, doing home visits, really making connections with the students and the families. And the schools that were involved in this grant are very concerned that we won't be able to continue that same level of support for the students. And that is kind of an issue with any grant we get, is do we use that money during that time to put in place systems that will then be able to be maintained after the grant's over, or do we spend it on extra staff who make things really, really good while we're in the grants, and then there's a drop-off afterwards. So that's something we need to see if our rates continue in the right direction now that we've kind of had that, or how do we refocus our funding under this local control funding formula that we're now under in the state, and make sure that we continue to invest. And I just want to, I know I've mentioned this in the past, dropout task force recommendations were made by a committee in 2010 to our board, almost 4 years ago, but only partially implemented. So that's a concern where I think a group of very smart, hardworking people got together, made some very good recommendations, and we have not fully implemented them. And then kind of a larger question is, are our students career and college ready when they leave us? And again, we have to work on defining what that means, make sure we're implementing all of that in our schools, and then really measuring that when students get to their 2-year college, their 4-year college, they're not taking remediation, that they're there and ready to make the most of that, so then they don't end up as a college dropout instead, even if we've graduated them. And so just to conclude, going back to those 4 key recommendations, where do we think we are? We've defined a dropout. I'm still concerned we may not be counting them as accurately as we could. I think we've done some good, built relationships with community agencies and businesses, especially in our Pathways program. Our career tech ed, we have a lot of relationships in our high schools now, but there's always room for more. The consistent funding, like I said, is a little bit of a concern with the grant going away. And the continuous oversight, that's something for the board to continue to do. And I really encourage everyone in the community, we need your help as well to hold the district and the board accountable, and just make sure that we get all those positive student outcomes that we need for our community. We talk about education really being the backbone of democracy. Wow. So highlight that. So this is very important work, and I look forward to talking to you again next year. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Elner, and I'm the chair of the Education Advocacy Committee. And our committee has been working on the dropout challenge for many years now, and I think we see some light we're not at the end of the rainbow, but we see some light in the dawn as we go on. Today, I'm going to talk to you, and we're going to have a program called Running and Winning. It all started last year when we got a new member, and he was formerly with the LA County Board of Education, and he'd had experience in Los Angeles City. And his name is Jim Quo, and we really dedicate this program to him. Jim came and he said, "Have you ever heard about running and winning?" And I said, "Gee, is that a race, like Race for the Cure?" And he said, "No, it's not quite that. Running and Winning is a program in which students and elected officials meet and interview, and the elected officials are interviewed, and the students learn what it's like to run a campaign and be elected as an elected official." And so it seemed easy for the beginning, but easy it was not. We figured we would start with LA Unified, although we know the Pasadena area has many more cities involved in it than that. But we started with LA Unified. And you don't do anything, Pasadena, I'm sorry. Well, we started with LA Unified in that they agreed to help us. Getting out of that one. But you really can't do anything in Pasadena Unified unless you get the superintendent and the board to go along with you. So I called and made an appointment with the superintendent. And it was not easy. You know, he's a very busy person, and it took a while. And I went there, and we sat on opposite sides of the desk, and he was sort of cool. I guess he gets a lot of people coming in with weird requests. And I started telling him about running and winning and what it was designed to do. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, his face lit up. And he became a friend. And he said, "You know, when I was a young man, a young boy, I was part of Boys Nation. And Boys Nation is similar to this." He said, "What can I do to help you?" It was great. So he said, "I'm going to put one of my staff members at your disposal, and you will work with her on all aspects of this." And he says, "I don't want any school in our area to be neglected, so we want a pro rata number of students from each school." So I said, "That's fine." And he said, "By the way, I think we can provide breakfast and lunch." So, I mean, I really, I couldn't believe it. So we had Jody Marqueso, who will be here. They're supposed to be here at 10:15 to talk. If they're not here, we'll start with the panel and we'll get to them later. But Jody Marqueso was designated as the person to help. But then there were other problems. Where do you house this? If you house it at one of the schools, it just seems like the same old, same old. So I had dinner with a judge one night, and I said, "You know, there's that federal courthouse at the end of Grand Avenue." And he said, "Well, you know, I don't know if you'll be able to use it, but if..." he gave me the name of the person that I could see. And we went to a group of our Education Advocacy Committee members, went to meet with him, and there were lots of rules, but he said, if you do it on a week when the judges aren't here, you'll be able to do it. So there was a room upstairs in the federal courthouse that was perfect for this. And there were tables that we could put in all different formations. So we had the venue. We had to get the students, and Jody will tell you more about that when she arrives. And also what we needed were discussion leaders for the event, because the students would be seated around a table like this, and there would be an elected official at each table, and we would have discussion leaders at each table. So where do we get the discussion leaders? Well, I had lunch with a friend of mine, a member of the PCC board, and she suggested I talk to some of the professors at PCC. And we had an overwhelming response because the PCC students were to get credit for this learning experience, because they were learning as much as the high school students, and they would be sitting with the elected officials. So now we had the PCC students as the discussion leaders. Of course, they needed some training, and we worked on that. The next problem was getting the elected officials. We needed 9 elected officials. Well, where do you get them? Well, I think what we did mostly there was cold calls. And it was amazing at the response of the elected officials. And we had an official from PCC who was on our panel. We had 2 city council members. Help me out, some of you. We had 2 people, school board members. We had a former state assembly person. We had a judge, yes. So we had a good representation. And the elected officials, we called them electeds for short. The electeds met with one group and talked to them for 15 minutes or so, and then they went on to another. So each group of students had the experience of being with 2 elected officials. Now, after the students met with the elected officials, it was their task to plan a campaign. And if you look on your table, you see these yellow sheets, and there they listed the names, the campaigns that each group took one campaign topic, provided a mayor and a campaign manager and speech writers, and they wrote a speech and they delivered the speech to the total group. And we have 3 of the running and winning participants at that end of the table. We also have on the dais, it's not a dais, at the panel table, a teacher who will tell you what she thinks about running and winning and whether it was valuable or not. So we start out with Jeanette Mann, who is an elected official, the oldest, the longest.
I'm younger than you, sweetie.
No, I didn't. And one of the facilitators, and a teacher from PUSD, and then 3 students. But before that, I'd like Superintendent Gundry to say a few words, and Jody Marcheso.
So I think she thought I wasn't in the room when she was talking about me. I don't think I'm that unfriendly. I'm a little businesslike when you walk into my office, but I'm actually very warm and friendly when you get to know me. One of my staff members in Houston told me, she said, we were kind of scared of you when you first got here, but after I come to know you, I think you're one of the kindest, most generous people I know. She says, but that's not your aura. I said, I've been told that since I was a teenager, so that's not news to me. But I would like to say a little bit, because she mentioned the Boys Nation thing. And first of all, I didn't participate in Boys Nation, but my brother did. And it did remind me of that program when I heard about this, and I think it's a tremendous program. If you're not familiar with Boys Nation, I believe there's also a Girls Nation program as well. What they do is they're elected from their school to represent their school at the state level, and they get together for a whole state, and they form a state government, and they meet with the legislature. They write and pass bills, and they basically create I think it's a week-long experience in the state capitol. And they actually create a state government and run for office, and then at the end of the process, they elect 2 boys from each state to represent their state at a similar convening in Washington, D.C., and it's called Boys Nation. So my brother was one of the 2 representatives from the state of New Jersey, and got to meet President Clinton during that experience. And the boys who went to Boys Nation all got presidential appointments to all of the military academies. And he attended the Merchant Marine Academy as a result of that. And so it was just a life-changing experience for him, and I'm sure for all the boys who participated in that. But even the ones who didn't get to the national level, can you imagine being able to go to your state capitol and have that kind of experience in learning about the way your government functions? Probably one of the most important and lasting learning experiences those kids, those boys and those girls, ever had in their high school experience. I don't know if they're still doing that program, but when I was a high school assistant principal, a few years back, they were still doing it because we had kids go from our school to that program. But what I love about this is it's an example of what I'm always talking about when I talk about 21st century learning, engaging learning, kids having learning experiences that are connected to the real world. And this is what we're emphasizing as a district. In our high schools, it's mostly embodied in our linked learning initiative, where kids are involved. About 45% of our high school students are in a linked learning academy, where their education has a theme to it. It's an engineering academy, or a culinary arts academy, computer science academy. We have, I think, 8. Something like that. 8 different academies out at our high schools. At Muir, every single student is in one of the career academies, and the other schools, it's not everyone. Even Marshall, we don't have any at Marshall right now, but we're going to have a Visual and Performing Arts Academy at Marshall beginning next year. And so the idea is to put high school education in a real-world context. And we don't necessarily expect kids to be choosing a career in high school, but it makes their high school education relevant, more engaging, and more interesting, and I believe it's one of the reasons we're seeing an increase in our graduation rate and a reduction in our dropout rate. If you've seen the latest report, graduation rates are up all over the state, and Pasadena is up even more than the state, and so we're very happy with the most current dropout and graduation data. We're looking pretty good, and interestingly enough, our students who are graduating at the highest levels, our African American students, are actually graduating at a higher rate than our white and Latino students. But they're almost all exactly the same at this point. There's very little difference in the graduation rates among kids in our district by ethnicity. The ethnicity doesn't seem to be a factor, at least right now. So we're real happy about that. We also, our attendance rates are way up this year. We have a new attendance initiative that we implemented this current year, and our attendance is up in 27 of 28 schools this year. So I won't name the one that didn't go up, but there's only one. I think that's an incredible accomplishment, because not only does that bring more revenue to the district, but it means kids are in school more often and learning more. And so that's what we need, is more time on task, and attendance is a big issue for us. And so I really believe that this emphasis, part of it is just following up better. That's why we're getting more kids in school. But I think at the high school level, our emphasis on making the high school experience more engaging is really paying off, and is going to pay off even more as we do a better job of it moving forward, because we're still not there yet in calling ourselves a real 21st century learning district. But we're moving in that direction, and what encourages me the most is when I go out into the schools, I hear teachers talking about it. And if teachers are talking about it, then that means they're engaged in the work, and they're the ones who are on the front lines with our kids making it happen. And so I think that there are great things happening here, and it's going to get even better. And I really appreciate this particular effort because it's a great example of the way we want to be educating our kids. And I appreciate the fact that this comes from the community to work with us as partners in providing our kids a world-class learning experience. So thank you for this. I'm a huge fan, and I'm looking forward to talking to some of the kids about the experience that they had. So thank you very much.
Is Jody here? This is Jody Marqueso, the woman who made all this possible.
Well, I had a lot of help. My name is Jody Marqueso. I work at the district office. I'm a teacher on special assignment, mainly overseeing science, but this is social science. So I can see the connection. Now, I was fortunate enough, Dr. McDonald and Mr. Gundry thought that I was the person that could help move this forward. And I know I'm supposed to be talking about PUSD's perspective, but we kind of just were the behind the scenes. So making sure students got there, and I couldn't have done that without great teachers like Frances Nicholson, who you'll hear from today. The administrators were great at letting me hound them and bother them and send them text messages and emails and phone calls, and that was about a 2-month process. But we all came together. One administrator even picked up a student who had to be at a track meet at 2:15. But the student really wanted to attend this event. And so the principal came to the Ninth Circuit Court, picked up the student, and got him to his track meet on time. And so it was that kind of community that really went into the process. And of course, without the students, I was walking around during the day, and the students were so engaged and asking the hard questions and were not afraid of who they were sitting at the table with, and were really enjoying the process. And the speeches they gave in the afternoon on the issues surprised me, on the side that they chose to take pro versus con, and their perspective on that issue was very eye-opening, and I enjoyed it just as much as they did. So really, I mean, PUSD's part was, of course, getting all the students there. You know, we helped with the food and the student packets, and pretty much I was the copy girl throughout the entire process, but sometimes that's all you need is copies. And so thank you, Dr. McDonald, Mr. Gundry, for putting me in charge of this little activity. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoy anything that gets our students out there and gives them experiences like this that they normally don't get in a day-to-day classroom experience. And they're going to tell you much more than I could ever from their perspective. So thank you.
I think I have to adjust. All right. Remember, we had elected officials. So our first panelist will be Jeanette Mann, Dr. Jeanette Mann, who was an example of the elected officials. After each one, you have paper and pencil on the tables to write down questions, and we'll just proceed with the panel and then have the questions. Jeanette?
Yes, I want about 30 seconds, don't count me. I want to explain about this thing with Carolyn. Carolyn and I were both at Cal State Northridge, and when I ran for office for PCC Board in 1983, I'm not the longest serving. There was someone on the board who's still there. Carolyn was one of my early supporters, so we've known each other for a long time. That's why I could kid her. I found this very exciting. I like young people. I like the age group. I've spent my entire professional life in universities as a teacher and administrator, and then I've been on the PCC board since 1983, which is a long time, almost 31 years. And so I found the questions were very well organized. I thought the facilitators were all students from Pasadena City College, and I knew they were going to be bright and capable, and they were. And the two groups that I went to, the facilitators kind of started off with the basic questions, but the students picked right up, and they did ask some kind of hard questions. And a couple of questions I really didn't want to go into, and they repeated it. So I didn't. So I didn't get an easy pass on that one. And interestingly enough, it was this young man who was sitting there kind of sulky and had to attract me, who probably asked the most difficult question about what was the most challenging thing. And so one of the most difficult things was, I'm from a family that's been Republican forever, and they didn't know I was a Democrat. And I happened to mention, when I called my father to say I won, first thing I ever run for, I got 2/3 of the vote, blah, 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 and I'm a Democrat Republican district, and there was this long silence. And he says, and how long have you been a Democrat? So then this young man says to me, well, and what did they do then? And I don't know if he thought they were going to throw me out or what. So he wouldn't let me off of the hook, and I really talked about it a little bit more. And this was something that obviously at the time was very painful. And so they went forward with it. I thought the whole concept was very well done, and I don't know if these students had to have some kind of basic GPA to be selected, but they were all very bright. They were attentive. They followed the logic of where I was going. This is, I told you I was a professor, but they were following what I was saying, and they would anticipate with questions. And to me, that's always a sign of an engaged and smart person, that they can ask you and kind of help you get from point to point. They ask a lot of questions. I was in 2 different groups about the nuts and bolts of campaigning, which I was very pleased to share with them about, did you have a campaign manager and how did you go about raising money? And I think this is very, very important because particularly anyone interested in running has to be willing to spend a lot of time raising a lot of money. Now, when I first ran for the PCC board, again, 1983, I raised $13,000, and that was the most anyone had ever run for that board. $13,000, if you can believe it. I ran 2 years ago, and I raised $30,000. So that kind of shows the difference. And this is for a community college board. This isn't state assembly. This isn't Congress, where you start talking about millions of dollars that you have to raise, or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think they had a really good understanding of this. They didn't seem discouraged. We did not really focus that much on issues, although I did tell them what issues that I had, that I had supported. And again, I was very, very pleased how they kept, as I said, leading the conversations. I was trying to think of, I guess the other thing that I found most exciting about it or anything was there was a very good interaction between the facilitators and the students. The students were pretty much on target, but if there was a little off, the facilitators engaged them. Facilitators who obviously were very knowledgeable. They knew how to again move the discussion along. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I think the kids thought it was a lot of fun. I've always found that if young people are having a good time, and older people, we won't get too far on age here, that they are much more apt to learn, and they're much more apt to remember what they have learned. And other people are kind of figuring that out, and they're having kids learn, using all kinds of different ways rather than just taking notes and so on. So, that's really about all that I have to say. I know my time's not quite up, but I will just wait and defer to questions.
Rosie Rodriguez is a student at PCC, and she was one of the facilitators.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning, League members. My name is Rosie Rodriguez. I'm 28 years old, and I'm a current enrolled student at Pasadena City College. The way I heard about this event was I walked into class one day, and my teacher said, if you want 200 extra points, sign up right here. So my name was first on that list. She had told us to come to a meeting later on that day, and I thought that was it. I'm going to get 200 points today. So I show up at 3 o'clock that day, and I come to find out that's not the end of this 200-point assignment. Jim and Melody were both there, and they gave us the whole breakdown of what this event was all about. and they were looking for people who had great communication skills, and I thought, hey, that's me. So I went ahead and I followed up, and they did have pre-screenings via email. Why do you think you should be a good facilitator? And I went ahead and I guess they liked my answers because I was chosen, and there I was at the running and winning form a week later. Upon showing up, we had a quick briefing that morning before the students or the elected officials showed up, where we received our packet with the whole breakdown of the whole day, play-by-play, and just a guide to help us conduct the interviews with the officials, and later on that day, the mock campaign. We had 2 elected officials come to our tables that day. Let me remind you, we had, I believe we were supposed to have 6 students. We ended up having 4. I had a co-facilitator who was absolutely amazing. She really set the bar, saying when we got our group, we had intergroup rules. 1 was respect each other's opinion, and 2 was no cell phone use. They actually were really very good about that. The first elected official was Assemblyman Anthony Portantino, and he is just this great, loud, wonderful guy. He literally came in the room and shook everyone's hand. And he was first to be at our table, and he was so optimistic, and he was a great spokesman, and he made everyone feel so comfortable right away, and that kind of set the vibe for our table. And the students were so good. There was a student in our group who is looking to run for student body president next year. So she right away dove in and said, what are your challenges? How did you overcome those? Can I get some tips? And so he was more than happy to elaborate on that. And at the end of the day, he said, I see you have a great smile. Well, you already have the number 1 thing you need to win this election. So that was wonderful, and we were so happy to have him. And our next guest was Miss Mann right here. She was excellent, and like I said, Sean was the gentleman who poked and prodded at her with real life questions, something that any older person would already know more about, the challenges and whatnot of coming from a Republican family and, being Democrat. But so it was so nice to see that these students could ask simple basic questions to these elected officials and make that connection with them, and see that there are real people out there that are in high places that they can relate to. Also, the mock campaign was the second activity that we led. Now, when I first mentioned mock campaign to my students, I had Stephanie, one of the students, look over at me with the most confused look on her face and saying, I don't understand. Are we supposed to make fun of these people? And so, bless her heart, I had to explain exactly what the mock campaign was all about. So, it just showed the range of how they understood exactly what they were in for. But they all just jumped in, and they worked great as a team, and they all worked cohesively as a unit, and they assigned the candidate, and we all knew who was the more outspoken one, and we assigned speechwriter, we assigned campaign manager, and they got to work right away. We had a working lunch, and so they got to see what it was like having to balance eating with getting your job done. And we, of course, helped them in any way we can. We did allow cell phone use for just research about their campaign. They had an issue. We had the issue of the KC exams, whether it should be required for a diploma. And so that was a difficult choice because we were actually tied when we were deciding whether we were going to be pro or con. So we ended up flipping a coin, which they were so excited about. And we decided we would be pro. And so right away the speechwriter got to work, and she was on it, and it just showed me, it was so refreshing and enlightening to see bright students wanting to be engaged in this type of activity. And of course I helped in as much as I could. I was coloring their poster and doing whatever I could, but at the end of the day this was as much of a good experience for them as it was for myself, saying there's not a lot of events here in this community that allow things that bridge the gap from the younger generation to the older generation. And I was just more than blessed to be part of it, and I look forward to many more opportunities like this. So, thank you.
We'll have questions at the end, so write your questions if you have an issue you'd like to talk about. All right, now we come to Frances Nicholson, the teacher, who sees the running and winning from another viewpoint.
Well, I was introduced to the Running and Winning program by Jody Marqueso. Jody and I, before she was running science for the entire district, Jody and I worked in the same faculty, and we've known each other a while. So it was fun. She listed off, what she wanted, and I picked students. Our problem, actually, the reason that only brought seniors was the juniors were testing that day. So I couldn't bring any of them. And I teach the AP government class to juniors. So the kids who would have been most recently at that level of government exam just didn't have that opportunity in this particular instance. But I brought some of my best and brightest from my regular government classes, and they had a lot of fun. It was really, I picked students who'd been very much engaged, and Jason was definitely one of those who's very much engaged. I want to introduce myself a little bit. My name is obviously Frances Nicholson. I'm a graduate of John Muir High School. Yes, I have divided loyalties. Both my children also graduated from Muir. Actually, I've got a big legacy in PUSD. My grandmother was hired to work at Wilson in 1934 and became, later on in her career, the first woman president of what is now United Teachers of Pasadena. My mother began, although she'd worked in Orange County briefly, ended up starting working for PUSD at Marshall in the early 50s. Took a break to have me and my little sister, but was there clear up into the late 80s. And my father started out at Muir and ended up as the chairman of the math department at PCC before he retired. So, and then I've been at Blair now. Well, I taught there for the first time in 1979-80 school year, but I've been there consistently since 1984. So I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of richness and growth. Middle school. Me? Oh, Dad. Yeah. Yes, he went. It was Washington, then Muir, and then PCC. He spent an eon at PCC, so I tend to forget the other stuff. I remember going to a Muir football game when I was about 3, and that's mostly it. And then, so I've been around the education profession all my life, and it's sort of the family business. I have been teaching government. My first year teaching AP government, the second day of that school year was 9/11. So talk about baptism by fire. It was a pretty wild time. I kept having to say, the Congress is passing things really quickly. You'll never see that again. That kind of thing. So, I've had kids interview Adam Schiff on the air and do other things like that. It's really exciting when you can get kids out and engaged with the community that is making decisions about their futures and beginning to be an active part of that. So I'm very, very pleased that we were asked to do this. I think it's a wonderful program. If we can schedule it at a time when it doesn't conflict with testing, I'll bring even more kids next time. And I think that we've got kids who are really more engaged in politics than has happened in a long time. I think they've sort of discovered their power in about the last 5 or 6 years, and that is an important thing to see, that when they hear that youth vote is up and that made changes and that people are listening to them more, that is a big important part. And all the kinds of state and national budget cuts of one kind or another affect their futures. I want to praise briefly the various academies. I have to point out that the lunch that the kids ate was provided by the Blair Culinary Academy. They do a lot of the catering for the district, and they're amazing. I mean, they really are. The one who runs that thing is stunning, what she gets done and the kind of future that the kids have when they leave there. And so there's all the things that we're doing around here, they feel much more empowered by. I think that's really good. I was not allowed in when they were talking to the elected officials. We were officially told, go sit in the cafeteria. So which I also thought was exciting because it meant that there wasn't somebody hanging over their head or they're feeling the need to impress or being shy because they didn't want to say something that might, annoy their teacher or something like that. They were totally on their own, and I think that was a remarkable and wonderful thing to do. We were also not allowed in while they were creating their campaigns. I'm loving hearing what happened in there because we weren't allowed to do any of that because they really did want us to be the people who had created the preparation necessary perhaps, but we were there to hear the results, to hear the campaign speeches and things. But again, this was students working with students. This was not something that would be, here you ought to do this or here you ought to do that by a teacher that they felt had control over their grade or who they respected to the point where they would go along with it instead of doing their own way of doing things. So I was very, very pleased by that as well as everything else, just the idea that, that this really was student-focused, student-oriented, that it wasn't the teacher showing off their students. And I think and we have I remember when I was a senior in high school being very insulted by something that happened involving a school board election, which implied that seniors in high school could not make their own political decisions. And I've kept that with me all the time. And so I'm very, very pleased when I see students being put in that same framework. You are the decision makers. You get to be the people asking questions because you are mature enough to do this. I mean, that's the best possible message that young people going out in the world could be receiving. This is down to you. This is the kind of thing you want to do for your future. And it's not just about something else or about adults manipulating the process. So anyway, that was very exciting for me. So I guess I'll leave it at that point.
There's something I want to ask you.
Yes.
The schools are all talking about the Common Core.
Right.
And how does this kind of experience fit in with Common Core?
Common Core is among other things, very hands-on. It's very much involved with projects and looking at things in a large picture way. And I think that this fits in very nicely, actually. I think it's a really good part of it in that it's the more you can create hands-on experiences. I mean, I teach economics too, and I have them invent a product and try to market it and figure out how it would be made. I mean, anytime you're doing things like that put them in the real process, you're engaging them in a way that doesn't happen when you're just looking at a textbook. I think that I teach in the IB diploma program. I teach a course called Theory of Knowledge, which is all about exploring what you know and how you know things and how other people know things. And I think this fits in well with that too, getting differing perspectives. So it works a lot of different ways. So yay. Anyway, I will, at this point, I will defer to the students who actually were part of the process.
Yeah, and I hope... And we have 3 students, and Jason Brown is first, and he's from Blair. And if you look at these yellow sheets, Jason, will you tell them which issue you talked about? And
Oh yeah, absolutely. So here we go. I actually like these table mics. I feel like Howard Hughes, the way of the future. Yeah, well, my name's Jason Brown. I'm a senior at Blair High School. I was notified, I think a few days before the actual event by Miss Nicholson. She said, I was sitting in class and she goes, "Hey Jason, come over here." And I said, "Uh-oh." So I walked over and she said, "Hey, you want to come to this thing?" I said, "Sure." So I showed up basically kind of knowing somewhat what it was about, but not really knowing much at all. So when I went in, I didn't really expect anything. I just kind of said, okay, I'll see how it goes. And it was really great when we sat down. I thought it was more going to be us listening rather than actually speaking to politicians or representatives. So when we sat down, I was with 2 students from PHS, and we all got to know each other. There's 2 facilitators from PCC, and it was great. It was great working together as a team, coming together and making our ad campaign. And one of the really cool things one of the things that stood out to me was talking to the politicians, because I come from a family where one side leans more to the liberal side and one almost leans to the very conservative side. So I almost land right in the middle. And And my family has always said, oh, politicians are just puppets. They just, read and have a nice face. So when I sat down with the politicians, it actually brought out a very, very human side to it, what I was told. There was a nice lady there, and I think it was Anthony who was showing me a bunch of handshakes. And yeah, and it completely changed my idea of politicians. And it's like, it showed me the human side of it. It wasn't just a fake smile as I was told. It was really good to talk and have a one-on-one conversation with them. They were talking about how they started, and it was really cool because each one of them had different upcomings in the political world. One was just, I guess, randomly just decided to go for it, and they ended up doing it. And one was, determined to go into the political world. And it was great sitting down and talking with them. And when we did our ad campaigns, my campaign was for should you ban bullets in LA County, LA County. And my team, we decided that we shouldn't. And then we made a slogan, a gun with no bullets is like mashed potatoes with no gravy. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it was just good working as a team there. It was a great program. I really didn't expect anything. I didn't expect that's what it was going to be. So when I went up there, I was like, oh wow, because I've never really run for anything. I'm never in ASB. I was never. I never really ran for anything much in school besides the funniest in high school, which I won. So just to make that clear. And but yeah, no, it was a great experience just to go up there and kind of come out of our comfort zone. Meet people we've never met before, and we come together as a team to do something we've all never really done before. And it was really good. It was a good experience, and the PCC advisors they were fantastic. When we go off to a different direction that was totally different where we're supposed to be, they guided us right back, and it's like, they kept us right on track. So it was a really good experience. I'd love to do it again. Unfortunately, I probably won't be able to because I'm a senior, but it was really great. I had a lot of fun. I didn't really I usually get a little more nervous when it's more public issues, but it was a great experience, and I had a few buddies there, so we ran against each other, so that was fun too. And I also thought when it said mock campaign, I said, am I going to be able to mock some of my friends? So that was I was kind of disappointed in that. But no, it was really great, and it was a fantastic program. Really, it really didn't tell us how to do it, but it helped us understand how it works. How we do campaigns. We didn't do anything with money or anything like that, but how we made slogans, we made banners, and it was really good. And one thing that really stood out to me with the program is, I should say, one thing I really connected with the politicians is the more outgoing and more funny ones, I should say. There was more of a connection there with the audience. So I tried to make my campaign a little bit more funny, but I don't know how that worked out. And but it was really good. It was a great experience, and I just like to thank them for giving me the opportunity to try it out and really kind of know what it was like to see how it works. So yeah, thank you.
Jason, can you tell us something about why you didn't want to ban bullets in LA County? Tell us something about the issues and what you did.
Okay. On my team, we discussed that that you shouldn't ban bullets because it infringes on the Second Amendment rights. That's what we all discussed and agreed upon. And if you take away guns, so to speak, it was on the subject of bullets, but generally it was taking away guns. So if you take away a bullet from a gun, it leaves, citizens defenseless against criminals. And I brought up a point that said, criminals don't obey the law anyway, so they'll always be able to have, access to firearms or things like that. So, I brought up the point too that police calls, is usually happening during the crime or, a little bit before, and it's like criminals can do whatever they want within that amount of time that the police actually get there to the scene. So, it's like if you arm yourself against criminals, you can defend yourself rather than have, the police or someone else defending you. So that was our big point. We disagreed on some stuff, but all together we came to a conclusion, and that's what we agreed upon. So that was our big reason why. Just the defense, personal defense against criminals, or one of my group members brought up about guns that can defend against a uprising government, keeping a government from getting too powerful. That's what one of them brought up. So yeah, that's about it. That's what we came to. That was our main points. Yeah.
Remember, at the end you can ask questions. I don't forget, there are papers on the table, because that way the video can hear it. But we'll also have some questions from the floor, so till we can sort the papers. Okay, we have our next young politician, Janet Herrera.
Yeah.
Hi. And tell us a little about what the experience was like.
All right. My name is Janet Herrera. I'm a senior at Learning Works Charter School, and I participated in the mock campaign by my teacher. She went up to me and she told me about it, and she brought me a packet. So I actually requested the packet because I wanted to go over it. Like, I wanted to be prepared. I didn't want to go in there and like not know anything. So she told me we were going to make a mock campaign. Like, I kind of know about politics because I like learning about it. I think you should learn about politics, and because it's happening all around you, and like there's different things and stuff. So I guess I went to do the mock campaign. I actually talked to Miss Cornell, who is the president of the League of Women Voters, and she actually recommended for me to come today. So I'm happy about that because I get to meet a lot of intelligent people. Anyways, so we did the campaign, and my campaign was for if ex-convicts should be guaranteed the right to vote, and we were pro because, we all felt that even though someone has made a mistake, that shouldn't be, their right to vote should not be taken away, because every vote does count. And in this country, not many people vote, so you need to get as much as you can. And also, it was really I liked the experience because I got to talk to the board member over there, and also a judge, and the judge was really I like talking to her because I actually read a book called Monster. I don't know if you guys read about it. No. And it was about a boy that's being convicted of a crime and how the whole process is playing out. And the judge was really she was really, how can I say it? Moment. She was really bright, and she was a very oh my gosh. Insightful person, there you go. And talking to her, it showed me why we need a system of courts, and why we need to have a judicial system, why, juries are important, why judges are important, district attorneys, defendants, and why everyone should be should have a right to, a fair trial. That is one in our Constitution, a right to a fair and speedy trial. Also, during our campaign, I was a speechwriter, and It was a really good speech. It was. I hope you still have a copy of that, but I wrote, the majority of people that are convicted are of Hispanic and African American race, and to take away their vote, it's like California is a majority of Latinos and African Americans, and if we took away their votes, it will really hurt California, is the way I looked at it. Also, it's hard to distinguish who really did a crime. Say a person, I don't know, was caught with a small possession of marijuana, or a person that actually committed a homicide. It's hard to distinguish who really, broken the law or not. The person that was caught with marijuana can, go through rehabilitation and change their lifestyle, and the person that committed the homicide is it's kind of different when they killed someone instead of holding something that's illegal. Anyways, talking to the facilitators were great. They were helping me more plan out my speech, because I kind of brainstormed it a little, and I was having a hard time outlining it. And he really showed me how to put things in perspective, and to put nay or say the valid points of why ex-felons should be given the right to vote. Yeah, I liked Anthony, the guy with the hand movements. Yeah, he showed me a trick. He showed me the turkey, but I really like that one. It's like a turkey, then you put it like that. I don't know. I forgot. And talking to a lot of intelligent people really got me thinking of why voting and why women should, how our history was formed, how women got the right to vote, then how African Americans, and how in other countries women still don't have the right to vote, and people are more segregated to one form of thinking. There's not really much of a democracy, sort of say. It's still happening in North Korea, I believe. Yeah, and Russia, and I think China, yeah. So, to me, it was really fascinating. I got to learn a lot of things about my campaign, and how many people, just one person, the campaign, the face is not really how much it is. There's a lot of people that go into it, and it's really fun when a lot of people talk about it, and we all see how serious a problem is and that's pretty much it.
I think it's terrific, and thank you. Okay, we have our third student, Tatiana Riley, and she'll talk about her experience in running and winning.
There's so many beautiful young women here. My panel, they're all beautiful as well. I'm Tatiana Riley, and I'm from Pasadena High School. I'm a sophomore. I feel so underage. Just turned 15, so. Well, the way I came to know about this program is at Pasadena High School, they have a program that is called JROTC. And it takes young people like me, teenagers, and they teach them what the military is like, Navy, and it's pretty serious at my school. We're really good. Unfortunately, I'm not in it. I have a lot of things to do. I'm involved in basketball and such things. And the way I came to hear about it is my coach is actually the instructor of JROTC. And he heard about this field trip I believe a week before, and it was actually supposed to happen. And he explained to us that he was supposed to get to know this 2 months beforehand, and that someone didn't do their job. I don't know who. and didn't communicate. But he said, I'm just looking for, 3 members to go because ROTC, not many people want to go, unfortunately, that are involved in like politics. So he asked me and my friends, and my friend was like, hey, a day out of school, why not? So I followed her lead on that, and just like my colleague Jason Brown over here said, I didn't really think much of it. I just thought I would be listening and more not hands-on, just learning and, the regular field trip. But it wasn't like that, and I'm so glad, because it was just such an amazing experience going there and being able to, when I got there, it was so amazing. And I thought that I was going to be overdressed because I had black slacks on with my purple shirt, and I had my Easter like bunny scarf on because it was Easter. It was going to be Easter weekend, and it was very professional. And when I got there, the facilitators were sitting down. They handed me a packet with this notebook, and they had everything laid out. It was a packet. And I sat down, and I was just like, all these amazing people, all these amazing elected officials that I can sit down and I can talk with, and I can finally get to know how they got into the political world, and I got to see how their upcoming was, and different opinions on politics and whatnot. And I got out of my comfort zone, and I should have done this earlier, because I wish I would have known about this earlier, because I love politics. I love it. I just love the idea of it. And as I was talking, Miss Jeanette Mann was one of my elected officials that was assigned to me. She was I actually have notes on her here. She was she's a very educated woman. She's a very nice individual. And as she shared, she was a Democrat in a Republican family. And I was just like, man, you just took a stand, and just she made very good points on how in the society that she had grew up in the early 80s, how things were still going on, how it was segregated still, and there were still some different opinions on African American. And I'm both minorities. I'm African American, and I'm Hispanic descent. And I just was like that. She took a stand, and she fought for what she thought was right. And I also got to talk to Miss Sandra Thomas, who's just a wonderful lady. She's just so wonderful. She's full of life. And I just see myself, just when I was talking to them, the facilitators, they started the questions, and they were asked, when like we got off track, it was like, okay, we're getting you back on track again. And they were very on point with that. And also with when I was asking them questions, they were very straightforward. And in my family, I'm the only one that's really involved in politics and loves voicing her opinion, standing up for what is right. And I love to see Superintendent Gundry there, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience for me, because I'm a young individual, and I need that. I need to know that the elected officials are there, they're listening. And Miss Sandra Thomas was even nice enough to give me her own personal number, and I just found that very amazing. And I loved it. And to tell you a little bit about the mock campaign, I know I'm probably rambling, but the mock campaign was actually amazing, because it was on a very serious issue, actually, abortion. And I had not found my stand on abortion yet. And I've actually struggled with my stand on abortion for about 3 years, since I know that I want to be a major politician, but start in the community first. I need to know what my stand is on certain major issues, and abortion is one of them. And I had the amazing opportunity to be with 2 seniors. We actually had only 3 people in our group, 2 students and me, and 2 facilitators. And one senior is going to Stanford University, actually, full ride scholarship. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Stanford has the lowest acceptance rate, and it's 5.8%. And I just found that amazing.
He's from Blair.
Yes, he's from Blair. Yes. And I was just like, wow. And they were so amazing, and they brought some new viewpoints, because I know some like hardships that are going on with abortions, and I said, okay, well, the slogan was "Say yes to a minor's protection," and we decided that abortion was. You guys are probably, I don't know what you guys' stand is on this, but we said that they do not have to have parental consent, but that in order for a young lady to have an abortion, she has to consult with a counselor and to know her options and to be able to voice her opinion, how she feels, because you don't know if that young lady is being abused in her home, and if she tells her parents, what might happen. The parents might go irate. And I just found that very interesting, and they brought that to light, and I was the candidate, but there's just so much back end work, the campaign manager, the posters, the slogans, everything that goes into it. Like, I just felt like I was the face and doing the speech. And it was very amazing, and as I was doing the speech, I felt very empowered, because I was voicing my opinion and other people got to hear it. And I was so glad when Miss Judkins asked me to come back again, because I really want to be a part of this next year and the year after that, because it's a very awesome program with very intelligent people, and it's just amazing. The young man that is on his way to Stanford, that's actually where I want to go, either Stanford, Agnes Scott College, Spelman College. I feel like I want to learn how to be more, I want to be an independent woman. I want to learn more about my history. I want to learn more about politics. Seeing Mr. Superintendent Gundry there, all these beautiful people that taught me, that gave me insight on such a broad spectrum of things. My mind was blown when I got home. I was like, Mom, you got to see this. Like, it's so awesome. She was like, oh my goodness. And I showed her, and it was just a very amazing experience. The facilitators were amazing. Elected officials were amazing. And I just wanted to thank you guys for allowing me to have this experience.
Ruth.
I just wanted to ask some clarification for the audience. You see, these are the 9 issues, and each table got a different issue. But they also, in their packet, got pros and cons.
Yes.
So they had maybe 5 pros and cons, and then they looked at those and then decided their stand. So you don't have those, but that's what they have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please. And
While you're doing that, could I make a couple
absolutely. You're
Okay.
free to make comments one to the other.
Well, okay, a couple of things I wanted to say. The person who was trying to think of a word to characterize the judge, I would call her also very liberal and understanding, because she and I arrived in the parking lot at the same time. I didn't know she was a judge, and so she was kind of starting to walk down, we're across from the Federal Building, down to the corner, so I said to her, don't worry with that, just come across the street like everyone else. So I got across the street, and I said, oh, by the way, I'm such and such. And she said, well, I'm Judge Mary. And I thought, oh, my gosh. And the second thing, is it Tatiana? Yes. Yes. You'll be happy to know that Dr. Sandra Thomas and I are sisters.
Yes.
We are sisters because of our long commitment to civil rights.
Yes.
Did she say that?
Yes, she did. You guys actually, when she came to the table, she was like, did you guys know we're twins? We're sisters. And I was just like, you guys look exactly alike.
While I sort some of these, you can raise your hand. While I sort some of these, Marna will take the microphone around. You can raise your hand.
I think it was Jason Brown who mentioned that your family has the cynical view that politicians are just faces who read words. Tatiana mentioned after the end of the process, she felt as the candidate like maybe she was just the face of the campaign who read a speech. I'm wondering, all three of you, if you could comment on whether you think that Tatiana's experience proved Jason's family correct or not.
I didn't know that was going to ricochet on you. I'm sorry.
You got to speak into the microphone.
I just felt I didn't. It was so much back end work that my campaign manager had to do, and it was actually one of the other students. I can't remember his name, but he was so helpful. While we were taking the working lunch, I was eating while I was doing the poster and then reading the speech at the same time. And he did not take his lunch for me because he had to finish the poster. And I was just like, wow, these individuals, they're so committed and they're so, I didn't feel like I was just the face again. I felt, I should have worded this correctly, but I felt like they were doing much more work than me, which is it probably doesn't work in like the real political world because the president has to go on appointments. They have to make sure that they're wording correctly. You don't make someone's opinions feel that it doesn't matter. So I just felt like they were just doing a little bit more work than I was. But other than that, I felt like I was very empowered in that my voice was being heard, and that I wasn't just the face. I was actually voicing my opinion along with my team behind me.
And I also I found that statement false. You know, they've told me like, oh, blah blah blah, and I said, yeah. And when I went there and when I was actually doing the campaign, I was like, yeah, it's not actually true. It's like that's more. They're voicing their opinions, it's like with the community behind them, and I think so that was it changed my point of view. I mean, I never really viewed it like that, but it changed the way I looked at it. And then, like I said, when I met the politicians themselves, they weren't faces; they were human beings. So that that proved their statement wrong as well. So yeah, that was what I got out of it.
When I was doing the speech, I was actually asking the candidate what she thought and trying to give her thoughts and her emotions in the speech. And mostly, everyone was just working together. Like, she was putting her opinions, her thoughts, and I was just transcending them into a piece of paper. We're all working together.
Okay. Of the students, including the PCC students, did this program make you think about running for office or another way you could be involved in making a difference in your community?
That's me. Yes. Well, this is the first type of experience that I've personally had with politics and the real world with elected officials. And this year, for the first time, I finally declared a major. It only took me 10 years. And it just solidified my decision to major in political science because I see that it is a science that involves people, and I want to get out there and I want to talk to the people and I want to make a difference for people who don't have the courage to voice their vote. And just like one of the elected officials, Anthony Portantino, said, he had to go to, since he was not known in his community, in his La Cañada community, he literally went knocking on 300 doors, door to door, to make himself known. And that blew my mind, and I thought, hey, I want to do that. So definitely opened the doors to the political world for me.
Thank you, Rosie. Anybody else?
Well, I actually have a great-grandmother. She's like about to be 100 years old. And she lives in Mexico, and she was telling me about the Revolutionary War. And she was about 4 years old when that took place. And to me, also I'm a Bill Maher fan. No one's seen him? No? Right. And to me, yeah, Bill Maher, there we go. Bill Maher. Anyways, to me, knowing about it is very important. I think, well, in my group range of friends, they really don't know who the vice president is. They can't name the metric, like what system of measurements we use, or they're not really involved in knowing about it, but I actually love it. You know, I try to read about the government shutdown and laws that are being passed, like the laws in Arizona about discrimination against Hispanics, and I think that's really important to know what's happening around you, because if you don't, something may change, and then you're not going to know about it, and then you're like, when did this happen? When did this law change? Well, you know, if you read about it or you learn about it, you can see that it actually took time for a law to pass. It has to go through Senate and the House of Representatives, and to know that is, I think every citizen should know that, and to be aware of their surroundings and their life, and how, you know, there's people try to help them right in the and change their future. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm very interested in politics. So when I got into the facility where we were doing this, and I got the feel after, before I've wanted to actually be a major politician and run for Congress and eventually, you know, get up there in the ranks. But meeting Miss Sandra Thomas and meeting Miss Jeanette Mann, that changed my perspective, because Miss Sandra Thomas made it known that how can you get your community to vote for you if your community does not know you? And I come from the Pasadena community, and I was listening to her, and I was like, why don't I start with my community first, help my community, and then I can move on to helping the state and then the world? Because, you know, you can't just jump from community to the world, you know. You got to know what your community is. So it helped me in knowing which path, how I'm going to take my path now, and it was very helpful.
Thank you. This question is from Ms. Nicholson. Hello. Is there an opportunity this fall to do student involvement in voter education about ballot measures?
Every time we have a national election, I do get students engaged in one way or another, and certainly we use the ballot information that is provided by the league regularly, so that they often go home to inform their own families about the pros and cons of things. I want to make sure that they can at least be the ones that are articulate in their family. Sometimes they're one of many articulate people in their family. In some cases, they're not. And to have them come and be the one who really know what they're talking about can be a very useful tool. And so for that, in that way, yes, absolutely. As far as being engaged in understanding the issues and being able to talk about them. When it comes to actual campaigning, I've had students who volunteered in various campaign offices at one time or another. I do not tell them what to do, because in that framework it would be partisan of me and inappropriate, but I do encourage them to get involved in things that matter to them. And then we have, they get very actively engaged when it's something that has to do with PUSD, particularly when we were trying to pass bond measures to improve our facility. There was a great deal of personal engagement on the part of the students. So it depends on the year, but yes, we always go over the bond issues, see, that's me, but go over all the various referendums that are coming out, because I want them to be the one who knows. I figure that's really a major part of my responsibility. I have been known to make a big deal out of people turning 18 and the fact they have to register to vote. And it's now online, which is almost unfortunate, because I used to have this big stack of voter registration things, and I'd ceremoniously take it over to somebody and fill out. But to be actively engaged, the beginning of every year, I teach government in the fall semester, and at the beginning of every year, one of the first questions I ask them is, who votes? And invariably, somebody will say, well, we do. And I say, no, you don't, but you should. And so, and increasing numbers, I says, you have to be the voice of the future. And the number of young people who vote is extremely small, so make it bigger. And we work on making that happen.
Thank you. Okay, this is to the students. Your mock election campaigns focused on policies. Real-world running and winning involves three key elements: policy, politics, everything from handshaking to attack strategies, and money. Of these three, only policy is dispensable. What did you learn about the politics and money elements of running and winning for an elected office?
Wowie. You now have 5 minutes to answer.
Well, we didn't actually get to experience like with money, physical money, but what the politicians were saying is that, you know, it's like even if your community knows you, you still need that, you know, money to build up your campaign. So yeah. That's as much as I have to say about the money part. I guess that's just the foundation of your campaign. That's how you build it up from there. And then the politics, I think, is the most important part. Is the actual, you know, handshaking and many handshakes, I should say. And yeah, I think just getting to know your community or your voters as well is really important, because you become. It's not just you become more. It's more personal. So that's what I think with the politics.
Bouncing off what Mr. Jason Brown said over here, I'm probably going to keep referring to Miss Sandra Thomas and Miss Jeanette Mann because they taught me a lot. But Miss Mann actually shared with me, I asked her, one of my questions was, what is your biggest fear in running for being an elected official? And her answer happened to be, I don't know if you mind me sharing this, Miss Mann, raising money, calling people and asking for money. And she said, as she mentioned earlier, she raised $13,000 years ago, and now 2 years ago she raised $30,000. And that doesn't seem like someone who's scared to raise money, Miss Mann, but it seemed like she said that your campaign does require money and it does require foundation, and she expressed to us how that works and how you have to, you know, approach people a certain way when you call them up. You know, you have to have poise and elegance and patience. And she shared how money plays a big role in, you know, campaigning, and also the politics as well, shaking hands, getting to know your community, getting to know your people and what they want.
Okay. Yes.
To me, money is one of the biggest things, but also really campaigning with the person, the candidate, putting themselves out there. Because I have older brothers and sisters, and when it was around 2008 for the elections, a booklet arrived with many officials' names. They didn't even know who they were or what districts were they from, but that actually discouraged them from voting. And to me, if an official can have a name for themselves, like put a billboard up, go from house to house, shaking their hands, or trying to really, you know, be on American Idol or something, like trying to like know who they are and what they're coming from and what are they fighting for and what are their plans, how they feel, how they want to change the community is a big retrospect in my community. Money, well, you need money to feed people. Like, if you give them a cupcake, they might even vote for you. That's what I learned from 5th grade when we had a running campaign. I didn't win, so some girl bought popcorn. I just brought cookies, and she got me. So that really showed me how money can influence so many people, but it can also discourage them because of, say, a person donates to one, they have to promise them that what like say a person donated like 10 grand to an official, and the person wants certain laws to be passed. The official has to, try to get the laws passed. I think it's complicated to be a politic. I wouldn't want to be that. I would want to sleep at night really good.
Write it down, or there's a microphone. All right, we have a microphone.
We have a microphone. Who wants I'm sorry I had to leave the room for a moment, so this may have already been covered, but you all have been so eloquent, I'm reinvigorated about politics. I wanted to ask, you spoke, I think, about starting with your own community, which seems so wise. What about your families? Have your views of all of you, your expertise that you're bringing even in your own homes, has that caused any friction or are you learning more about politics just living in your own home?
I feel like I'm talking a lot. I don't want to take anyone else's turn, but as I said, I'm pretty much the only one that's really involved in politics in my family. They're involved in like all the presidential elections. What views do they have? But I have these long conversations sometimes with my mom, of course, when my 6 and 9-year-old brother aren't home nagging her all the time. I tell her, well, Mom, when President Obama was running and when McCain and all this stuff was going on, even as a young girl, I read books. I practically lived at the library in the government section and just reading, and just the interesting things you find on these presidential candidates is very amazing. I shared with her that it's not just their demeanor that you have to look at. You have to look at their views, their lifestyle, how they came to be, what schools they went to, if they didn't just, if they know how to communicate with all kinds of people. Because I know when I talk to my friends, it's different when I talk to an elected official, when I talk to a politician, and it hasn't created any friction because I know how to respect other people's opinions, and I don't have the same problem as Miss Mann, where I'm the only Democrat in my home. Most of my family is Democratic. I'm Democratic. But I hope it doesn't. But with politics, there are a lot of opinions that you have to respect. Sometimes people don't feel like you're doing enough to respect them. And I hope it doesn't get to that point. But if it does, God will take care of it. I will respect their opinion. Mom, Dad, my brothers, and you have your opinion, I have mine. But if,
Thank you. Thank you, Tatiana. Anybody else?
Yeah. Like I was saying, with my family, it's either you're very Republican or you're very Democratic. So what I do is I just kind of sit back and watch them butt heads and kind of take points on either side. And it's funny because they won't even be arguing about the actual candidates. They'll be arguing about the TV shows in which they watch. So, I watch Fox, or I watch, it's like, so I found that pretty funny. But I don't think there's any real friction in there. Well, they're always, they always have, when politics come up, they always butt heads, but it's not really, there's no real friction in there. It's more like they kind of come to, they agree to disagree. Yeah, so it's like, I don't believe that, but they hear each other's standpoints, and so I kind of pick up on both sides of the story on that. So that's where I learned the politics from, is listening to both sides and taking points from both sides.
Okay, there's a question here I can answer. Who created the questions and the issues? Many of them were from the Los Angeles League of Women Voters, and we did develop one new one. Two. What were they, Melody?
The voter one and the felon voter one.
Oh, should felons, should 18-year-olds be required to register? And then the felon issue. Okay, this is for Jeanette Mann and Ms. Nicholson. What additional civics activities or experiences would you like to offer to students and community members?
I'll let Ms. Nicholson go first.
After you, Alphonse.
Yes, okay. I think we get involved at least once every 4 years in the League's mock election for president, which is always a very useful tool, and we have very high participation at my school in doing that. And I think that that's a very useful thing. It gets the kids to understand how their opinions relate to the opinions that end up being the decision makers nationwide, and that sort of thing. Community stuff, I have a lot to do at school, so I stick it there. But it has been useful to make the connection. One of my former students, who was at one point a Pulitzer-nominated journalist, ran as an independent and won as the city clerk of San Bernardino shortly before everything hit the fan there. Mm-hmm. And she was delighted to be in that space because there's a lot of inbred politics in San Bernardino, and she was determinedly not that. And I was, as a city clerk is supposed to, releasing a lot of public documents that other people would rather were not public, and felt that she was really doing good for the city. But in the process, she came and talked to my students several times while she was running and just after she won about what it was like to be involved with the campaign, to have to raise the money, to be the outsider in a very closed community, to have to go to parts of town that other people had not addressed and shake hands and talk to people and make sure that she was really being heard by the entire community. And that was a fascinating thing. I got to go and watch her be sworn in. It was very exciting. But the thing is that all of that made it all very real for my students, and that was a very useful thing as well. So hopefully in the near future I'll have somebody else run for a political office, and we can do it again. So there's things like that fall in our laps. We do bring in some local politicians sometimes to do that similar kind of thing, but it was particularly empowering, I think, that year for my students to see that a graduate of their own high school was in the process of doing this as well. So, yeah.
Okay, could you read the question?
The question was, what additional activities, civics activities, would you like to offer to students and community members?
Well, you know, a college has a lot more civic involvement than a high school can, because college students are adults. So, for example, our students are involved in many of the organizations in the community. They collect gifts for foster kids. They do lots of work with lots of charities, and they also are much more active and engaged politically. The student government all students have to pay a student fee, a student activities fee, which I was opposed to, but I was the only person on the board. And this student activities fee goes to fund student activities. Much of it goes to a group of students who are politically engaged, but not in partisan politics. So one of the things they do is every year they go to Washington, D.C. They take a group of students to Washington, D.C. They meet with the Congress people. They meet with, when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House, they met with her. They go to Sacramento. Their elections are much more closer to being a real election, so to speak. They have parties, and they run. They have interest groups who get involved, and they often do get involved in individual campaigns. Plus the fact that they're on college campuses, community colleges where people are elected, they see trustees running for office every 2 years. I can't speak in much more detail about all the civic activities they're in, but I do know that we have like a list of probably 100 student clubs. Remember, we have 30,000 students at PCC. PUSD, I think, has 17,000. They're only there for a little time. We have a lot of students. They come from a lot of different places. They have a lot of different interests. So almost any kind of a group or activity that you would have in the community, you might actually have in the college. And sometimes they're independent and sometimes they are not. I do know that many of the community organizations, and I assume, you know, like League of Women Voters, AAUW, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, so forth, actually try to get students at PCC more involved. And sometimes they can't. And one of the reasons I think why the students do not get that involved in the external community is the ones who would be getting involved are very involved in the internal community. One of our former student trustees, and that's by the way an elected office, you have to run and be voted to that, was elected to that. Then after a few years, after he went through law school, was elected to the city council. And now he's on I think he's the president, or he was president of the LA Community College Board. Now the LA Community College Board, they have over 1 million voters. So that's a very, very large campaign. You're talking about probably raising almost $1 million to run for that. So that's running for office at a pretty high level. He attributes his start to PCC.
Rosie, do you have any comments about your experience at PCC?
I've been at PCC for a while now, and I actually have gone through the paralegal program that they have there, which is just stellar. It's accredited by the Bar Association, so they have serious, real life professionals teaching those classes and teaching those civic lessons that you have to learn to use in that form of work. So that's the part that I've gotten my feet wet in. Other than that, I know that there's so many clubs and communities and activity groups on campus that I can't even begin to name, like Ms. Mann said. And I just hope that they have more activities where the college students that are already involved and they know what's going on within politics can reach out to, you know, people that are younger to be able to bridge that gap. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just add one more?
Yes, certainly.
I think at the high school, if you're wanting to talk about ways in which people get engaged other than the student government, which is fairly obvious, internally, we also have significant advocacy groups, but they're less related to political stance than they are to groups of people who wish to have their culture and needs acknowledged. We have the Latin American Student Association, which is very strong. We have the Black Student Union, which is very strong. And we have a Gay Straight Alliance, which is very strong. And all of those bring perspectives to what everyone is doing on the campus on a regular basis. So as far as internal civic stuff, it tends to be more in that relation than others, except for, of course, the Associated Student Body. And we do have real elections there too, but they're not on the same level as at PCC.
And finally, the last question. Then we're going to see an evaluation of the program and some pictures of it before we have lunch. Francis Nicholson, what is your reaction to the speeches and the topics discussed? Did the positions surprise you?
I've been teaching high school for 30 years. Nothing surprises me. I love it. I've always told my students when they were giving position pieces of any kind that they don't have to agree with me. They just have to have a legitimization for their opinion. And if they just say because I said so, then nah. But that's basically where I come from. So I was really interested to see in each case, when they were speaking about their positions, they were backing them up. And they were backing them up with things that they genuinely believed and felt they could talk about with passion. And that did thrill me. That did thrill me. So I was, the students that were there that I knew that were doing the speaking, there was an occasional, oh really, is that what he thinks, you know? But that was not a negative thing. It was just interesting to realize another facet of the student that I had.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I know that I'm the only person standing in the way of lunch, so I know what my duty is to talk quickly. But before I do, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Brian McDonald from PUSD, and again, thank PUSD for all the support they've given us. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about the evaluations, and I think in light of POSD being here, I think we got pretty good grades on this. We received 47 evaluations, 29 from students and 18 from our facilitators. And so right now I'd like to just focus on what the students told us. We asked them to rank 3 activities, and these were sort of forced responses. They needed to just check off a range of excellent to poor. And those activities were interviews with officials, mock election campaign, and their general overall experience at the courthouse. We also then asked them to respond to 5 narrative questions, or typically what we call open-ended. So here's just a snapshot of the first set of questions, and you could see that we really received almost 90%. Well, if we include good responses, clearly 100% with interviews, campaigns, and the experience at the courthouse. Interviews with officials, 23 respondents checked off excellent, 6 good. Mock campaign, about the same, 23 excellent, 3 good, 3 fair. And then courthouse experience, 25 excellent, 2 good, and 2 fair. The narrative questions, of course, for these qualitative type of assessments are the thing that really informs us. And so the first question was, what part of the program did you find most interesting? Trying to sort this out, 20 people responded, meeting with elected officials, 5 with election campaigns, and 4 other types of responses. And here are some of the responses that we got. I got to learn what they really do and what I have to do in my own life. That sort of underscores what was said earlier by Superintendent Gundry about making connections to the real world. Enjoyed listening to their stories and experiences. I was able to interact with real elected officials and meet someone who is representing me. How did this experience change your opinion about government and elected officials? I'm now excited to vote and make a difference. I saw officials as they really are, people, and people who know how to have secret handshakes as well, I suppose.
I gotta learn the turkey.
They are not all blithering fools, but rather nice and excited people who are sincere in their motivations to help the community. I like that one. How did running and winning change your ideas about yourself and desire to participate in government? I realized that ordinary people could influence and become great leaders. It made me more open-minded. The experience showed me that politics and government is not as complex and impossible as I thought. It got me thinking about a new way of helping others and giving back to my community. Yeah. Tell me one thing you plan to do as a follow-up here to your experience. Probably run for something at school. Call Miss Sandra Thomas. And I plan to register to vote when I turn 18. Yeah. All right, and then the final question, any additional comments? Thank you, LWV, for organizing this event. Overall outstanding experience, stupendous, and thanks for the food. I think somebody mentioned about the food. All right, I've got a short video clip of kind of a collection of sound bites from our electeds, and I'd like to share that with you.
There are a lot of ways asked me more questions about exactly what I do, and they were really interested. And I just felt like, we were both engaging with one another. I had a great time.
I think it's very important that we grow up leaders. We need to grow up now. I told them, you're not tomorrow, you're our today. Because we need you to grow up now and be ready to help us in the future. I found out that many of them are interested in the political arena. And I think that's wonderful, because what you did today was offer them an opportunity to develop and to become part of our legislative structure.
Questions were terrific. The students, trying to figure out what they're going to do, and some of them want to go into public policy. Several of them want to, go into public service, military. It's just exciting to be around young people who, have all the right questions and are on the right path and eager to learn more.
I didn't know I was going to run for office when I was in high school, but if I had been a part of this program, that definitely would have helped me see, how important it is for young people to get engaged, even if it's just as a, voter. So today was a great turnout. I hope next year can be even bigger, and with some really smart kids in PUSD.
These kids are great. They ask fabulous questions. I almost feel like I've been presiding over a trial, having to listen so carefully, and they really care about the future, and I think you've sparked their interest, and you don't know how many lives you've changed by this event.
And just to close this, a snippet of some of the campaign speeches.
A young woman needs parental consent to have an abortion. Okay. Imagine a young, bright woman at the end of her rope. She has struggled in her life, had a fit of bad fortune, and in her end resulted in a pregnancy she neither wanted nor asked for. She was unable to approach her parents who have a history of abuse, and who, if they ever found out about the pregnancy, will ostracize and forever scar their daughter. Such situations happen every day, every hour across America, whether in Los Angeles or New York, Black, Hispanic, or white, the situation is the same. A young woman is afraid to proceed with a legal, safe procedure of abortion because of the fear she feels from her parents.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Krista Cachadorian, and I'm advocating free higher education. So covering the cost of higher education would encourage students to pursue higher education and to pursue their dreams. The rising tuition costs has caused many students to give up on the pursuit of college in order to pursue jobs in industry. But as we already know, unemployment increases in our country, and those without college degrees are unable to obtain those jobs and are sent into poverty. The long-term solution to this poverty issue is higher education, namely free higher education.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sadie Amador, and I was born and raised in the sunny state of California. As a student in California, I am very familiar with the standardized testing system of public schools, as I have been taking them for about 10 years. One might even call a senior high school student a professional test taker. My experience with test taking gives me the confidence to say that exit exams are necessary in our public schools to ensure that our students are receiving a quality education that prepares them to succeed in the future.
Should bullets be outlawed in LA County? I think no, because a gun with no bullet is like mashed potatoes with no gravy. It is pointless. This is what you want right here.
Hello, my name is Kiana Francis. I'm from State Academy, and our topic here is should schools be able to censor student newspapers? High school students don't have a full life experience yet due to the small amount of years lived. The young minds of high schoolers have yet to develop their full potential. Therefore, adults should be careful and cautious as to what is being displayed and fed to today's youth. The media today can paint a very vivid, emotional picture with just a few words. What the media puts onto television and in a newspaper can lean toward a positive or negative feeling. In school, students send their children to learn and develop their minds to their full potential. Students are put in school to further their education. And with that being said, schools have a moral responsibility to protect students in their living environment.
My name is Willie Schultz, and I believe that we need to increase our voter turnout. Why, you might ask? So the people, especially the younger people, can have a real voice in their government. If you don't vote, you're giving up that power, your power, to someone else. An interesting fact, only 50% of eligible 18-year-olds registered in 2008. Now, how are we going to solve this problem? Another question. What I propose is that we require every single eligible voter above the age of 18 to register to vote.
I'd like to say one last thing. Even though Carolyn credited me kindly about bringing this project to the league, if it really wasn't for her persistence and vision, this project would not have gotten off the ground. And a few core members in the Education Committee, Melody Comfort and Ruth Judkins and Jody from the district. And I think it's these people were the ones who really, really made this happen.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our program. Would you leave the room now so that they can set up? And I'll see you back here. And we're going to try and have the students sit at tables if there's a vacant spot. So if there's one at your table, let us know. Otherwise, the students will sit at the VIP table.